April 14, 2024, 7:03 a.m. When I arrived at my son's grave that morning, a for sale sign stood in front of his house. His wife, Vanessa, was already on the porch, dressed in black, holding a realtor's clipboard, smiling faintly at the man with the camera. My son had been buried less than 2 weeks. I froze on the walkway, still holding the flowers I'd brought for Michael. The air smelled of damp soil and spring lilacs from the yard I'd planted myself. When I finally asked what was happening, Vanessa didn't even blink. She said, "You'll need to move your things by tonight. The house isn't yours anymore." Then she turned away, and the realtor hammered the sign deeper into the ground. The sound echoed across the empty lawn, each strike like a heartbeat I couldn't steady. How could they do this to me? After everything I gave them, how did it come to this? If you want to understand how I reached that moment, stay with me, and please, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. Because what happened next changed my life forever. My name is Patricia Caldwell. I was born in 1959 in a small town in Ohio, in a house that leaned slightly to one side when the wind picked up. My father was a mechanic, my mother, a school secretary who smelled of chalk and peppermint tea. They didn't have much, but what they did have, they held on to with quiet pride, their word, their work, and their family. That was the soil I grew from. I became a nurse when I was 22. Back then, hospitals were still filled with cigarette smoke in the staff rooms and handwritten charts that smelled faintly of disinfectant and ink. I worked nights, weekends, every holiday you can name. My patients came and went, but the faces of those who stayed on the edge between life and death never left me. I learned something from each of them, that people show their truest selves when they're afraid of losing what they love. That lesson carried me through everything, especially raising my son, Michael. After my husband, Robert, was killed in a construction accident in 1997, Michael was just 8. He had his father's quiet humor and my stubborn streak. We used to sit on the porch after supper, the two of us, eating orange popsicles and counting the headlights on the road below. He once told me, "Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to make sure you never have to worry again." I smiled then, not knowing that I'd spend most of my life worrying only about him. I worked double shifts, tucked away every bonus, every refund, every penny I could. I didn't go on vacations. I didn't buy new clothes unless the old ones tore. Everything I had went toward Michael, his schooling, his car, his wedding. When he met Vanessa, I wanted so much to love her. She was polished, confident, the kind of woman who looked like she had her life planned on color-coded spreadsheets. She worked in marketing, wore smart suits, and carried herself like she belonged to a higher world. At first, I thought she was good for him. She encouraged him to dream bigger, to apply for promotions, to host dinners that made him beam with pride. I was grateful. I told myself she was giving him the life I never could. When they bought the house, the one I later saw with that for sale sign, it was my name that helped secure the down payment. Michael's credit was decent, but my savings made the difference. I told them I didn't need to be on the deed. I trusted them. After all, family isn't supposed to be about contracts. It's supposed to be about love and trust. At first, Vanessa treated me like a second mother. She'd bring me coffee in the mornings, talk about decorating ideas, ask for my recipes. When their son, Eli, was born, she called me from the hospital in tears, saying, "I couldn't have done this without you." I believed her. I was there through the sleepless nights, the diaper changes, the school drop-offs. I kept their home running when they were too tired to care. Michael would sometimes say, "Mom, I don't know what we'd do without you." Those words filled every quiet space in me that widowhood had left behind. But over time, I noticed small things, subtle, passing moments that didn't register until much later. Vanessa began to correct me in front of others. "Michael likes his coffee stronger," she'd say, taking the cup from my hand. Or she'd move the framed photo of Robert from the mantel to a back hallway to keep things from feeling too cluttered. I didn't want conflict. I told myself she just wanted her own space, her own rhythm. I was living in their house, after all, or so I thought. Then came the day of Michael's 35th birthday. I'd spent hours putting together a photo collage, our family through the years, the three of us standing in front of each milestone, his graduation, his wedding, Eli's first Christmas. When I handed it to him, he smiled with that soft warmth that always broke me. But Vanessa's eyes flickered, not with affection, but discomfort. She said quietly, "Maybe we should start taking new pictures, just us." The room went still for a moment. I laughed, thinking she meant it lightly, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. It was a practiced expression, polite, sharp, almost rehearsed. That was the first time I felt the edge of something I couldn't name yet. After that, I was no longer Mom. She began to call me Patricia in public. She started saying things like, "Patricia's been staying with us since Robert passed," as though I were a long-term guest. I tried to correct her once, gently, but Michael looked uneasy. He said, "Mom, she doesn't mean anything by it." I wanted to believe that. I always wanted to believe the best in my son's wife. But belief has a way of blinding you to what's being taken right in front of you. Vanessa's tone changed over the years. Her gratitude became expectation. When the dishwasher broke, I paid for it. When Eli needed braces, I covered the deposit. When they remodeled the kitchen, I transferred $10,000 from my savings without hesitation. Michael thanked me with hugs and promises, but Vanessa just nodded, as if it were the natural order of things. By then, I was 63. I had planned to retire the following year. But instead of security, I had their bills, their mortgage, their future balanced on my shoulders. Still, I told myself I was lucky to have a family that needed me. Lucky to wake up in a house filled with voices, even if they weren't always kind. Lucky to still be part of my son's world. It's only now, looking back, that I realize what I mistook for belonging was really dependence, their dependence on my quiet obedience, and mine on their approval. And that was the most dangerous dependence of all. It's strange how the beginning of loss never looks like a disaster. It arrives politely, with soft footsteps, wrapped in something that feels almost reasonable. That's how the first crack appeared. After Michael's 35th birthday, Vanessa began rearranging the house. She said it was time to refresh the energy, as if love and memory were furniture that could be moved around to make room for something trendier. She took down the photo collage I'd made, replaced it with a print of a sailboat. When I asked where the pictures had gone, she said, "Oh, I put them in storage. We'll rotate things." They never came back out. The next change was subtle. She stopped leaving a cup of tea for me in the mornings. I'd come down to the kitchen, and the counter would already be cleared, the smell of toast replaced by her floral perfume and the faint click of her laptop keys. She'd say, "Morning, Patricia," without looking up. Michael didn't notice the difference at first. He was working long hours, trying to cover debts I didn't know existed. When he did sit down with me, he looked tired, thinner, quieter. I'd make his favorite soup, and he'd smile, spooning it slowly like a man forcing himself to taste comfort he could no longer feel. One afternoon, I overheard them arguing behind the closed office door. His voice was tight, hers clipped. "All I'm saying," Vanessa said, "is that she can't keep treating this place like it's hers." Michael's reply came softer. "It is, in a way. She helped us get it." Vanessa sighed sharply. "And we'll help her by making sure she's comfortable somewhere else when the time comes." The time comes. That phrase stuck in my head. I pretended not to have heard. I kept making dinners, folding laundry, taking Eli to school. But that night, when I set the table, Vanessa moved one of the chairs away. "Eli likes more space," she said. It was a small thing, but I felt the message. I was slowly being edited out of the picture. Then, the accounts started changing. I had access to a joint card we used for groceries and household bills. One morning at the pharmacy, I tried to pay for Michael's prescription. The cashier ran the card twice and frowned. "I'm sorry, ma'am, it's declined." I checked the balance on my phone. Account closed. When I called Vanessa, she answered in her business voice. Oh, yes, I meant to tell you, we've restructured the finances. It's simpler this way. Vanessa, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, that account had my funds in it. It's all family money, she said lightly. Don't worry, Patricia. Everything's being handled. Handled. Another word that sounds calm until you understand it means control. I told Michael about it that night, but he just looked torn. Mom, please, don't start something. Vanessa's been under a lot of stress. I'll fix it. He didn't. Weeks later, I found my mail in a pile near the door, opened. Credit card statements, insurance letters, even my pension summary. I asked Vanessa if she'd been sorting the mail. She smiled like I'd made a sweet mistake. I just wanted to make sure nothing important got lost. You know how easy it is for older people to overlook details. Older people. Not you. Not Mom. Just a category I'd been quietly placed into. The real crack came the day Michael was admitted to the hospital. It was sudden, chest pains after months of exhaustion. I rode in the ambulance with him, holding his hand. He whispered, "I'll be fine, Mom. Don't worry." But he wasn't fine. He had an undiagnosed heart condition. After 2 surgeries and a week in ICU, he was gone. Just like that, the sun I had built my life around, silenced by a monitor that stopped beeping at 3:27 a.m. At the funeral, Vanessa looked impeccable, black hat, perfect posture, tears that didn't smudge her makeup. She spoke beautifully about Michael's strength, his love for his family, his devotion as a husband and father. She never once mentioned me. People came up to her with sympathy. To me, they offered polite nods, as though I were an afterthought, a distant relative. I stood near the casket, clutching the handkerchief Michael had given me one Mother's Day, white linen embroidered with blue initials. It was the only thing that felt real. After the service, Vanessa took the house keys from her purse and pressed them into my hand. "You should stay with us until things settle," she said gently. But later that week, she changed the locks. She told the neighbors it was for safety. She said I'd only be there temporarily. When I returned from the cemetery one evening, I had to ring my own doorbell. Vanessa opened it halfway, smiled, and said, "Oh, Patricia, I thought you were staying at your sister's tonight." That was when I felt it fully, the clean, cold line of separation she'd drawn while I was still in mourning. The house no longer smelled like Michael's aftershave. It smelled of lemon cleaner and fresh paint. The warmth was gone, replaced by the sterile air of something already being prepared for sale. That's how the first crack widened, not with shouting or betrayal in the open, but with politeness sharp enough to cut through grief. And still, I stayed. Because even when the world tells you you're unwelcome, your heart clings to the last place your child was alive. It happened 3 months after Michael's funeral. By then, the house felt like a museum where I was the only visitor. I moved quietly, cooked simple meals, kept to the small bedroom at the back. Vanessa barely spoke to me unless it was about Eli's schedule or something she wanted organized. Still, I stayed. I told myself I was there for my grandson, that Michael would have wanted me close. One morning, while cleaning the kitchen drawer, I found a plain white envelope addressed to occupant. It was from a real estate agency. I almost threw it away, until I saw our address printed under the words "Property Sale Agreement." My hands went cold. I opened it. Inside was a letter confirming a pending sale for the exact property, our home, signed by Vanessa Clark and Patricia Caldwell. Only one of those signatures was real. The handwriting that claimed to be mine looked practiced but off, the loops too wide, the P curling in the wrong direction. I stared at it for a long time, feeling my pulse climb into my throat. Beneath it, in legal type, it read, "Seller affirms consent and financial relinquishment." I read that line again and again until the words blurred. I walked to the porch, letter trembling in my hand. Vanessa was outside watering her hydrangeas, her sunglasses reflecting the morning sun. "Vanessa," I called, my voice smaller than I meant. "What is this?" She glanced at the page, then smiled, a calm, distant smile. Oh, that. Don't worry, it's just preliminary paperwork. The realtor needs my approval to start the listing. And why is my name on it? She took off her sunglasses slowly, as if explaining something to a child. You know, Patricia, the house was really Michael's and mine. You contributed, yes, but there's no official record of ownership. The sale is just a formality. I felt my knees weaken. A formality? I whispered. My savings, my pension, I paid for half this house. Her tone stayed pleasant. You helped, and we're grateful. But legally, it's not yours. I think it's best if you start making other arrangements. I couldn't find words. Only the sound of the wind through the porch screen. Later that evening, I checked the documents in Michael's old desk, the mortgage receipts, utility statements, the handwritten note he once gave me. Mom, thank you for the down payment. You made this dream possible. I held that note like a lifeline. The next day, I visited the county records office. The clerk pulled up the file. Looks like the property is being transferred under joint authorization, she said. We just need final signatures before closing. Joint authorization? I asked. She turned the monitor toward me. There, on the screen, was my forged name again. Next to it, the date, April 2nd. I was at the cemetery that morning, leaving flowers for Michael. My vision blurred. I remember steadying myself against the counter. The clerk asked if I was all right. I nodded, though I wasn't sure. When I returned home, Vanessa was hosting two people in the living room, a man in a suit and a woman carrying measuring tape. I recognized the logo on their folders, Brookfield Realty. She looked up, still smiling that same professional smile. Oh, Patricia, this is Mr. Haynes and Ms. Lorne. They're helping us get the house ready for sale. For sale? My voice came out like a whisper. Yes, she said briskly. The market's strong right now. It's time to move forward. Vanessa, you forged my name. The room went still. The man shifted awkwardly, pretending to check his notes. Vanessa's eyes hardened, but her voice stayed level. You're mistaken. Maybe you forgot signing. Grief can blur memories. That word again, grief, used like a weapon, not compassion. I took a breath, slow and deliberate. If you think I'll let you sell this house, you're wrong. She gave a short, humorless laugh. You can't stop it. Your name isn't on the deed. You're just living here out of kindness, Patricia. Don't make this harder. Her words hit harder than shouting ever could. She turned back to the realtor and said, let's continue. I walked out onto the lawn, the letter still crumpled in my hand. Across the street, Mrs. Bailey from next door was trimming her hedges. She looked at me with pity. Everything all right, dear? She asked. I wanted to answer, but no sound came. I just stood there, watching as the man hammered the for sale sign into the ground, the same sound that would echo again the morning I returned from Michael's grave. That night, I sat at the kitchen table until dawn, surrounded by documents, the note from Michael, the receipts, the closed account notice from the bank. I realized then how carefully Vanessa had been working toward this moment, step by step, under the disguise of civility. There was no shouting, no confrontation, no apology. Just paperwork. That was the night I stopped being a mother-in-law trying to keep peace, and became a woman who had to protect what little of her life remained intact. Because love can forgive 1,000 things. Forgery is not one of them. That night, the house felt like a stage after the audience was gone, quiet, lights low, props left behind. I drifted through rooms I had scrubbed and paid for, touching chair backs. The stove clock hummed at 11:42 p.m., a tired insect. In the hallway, new boxes were stacked like a barricade outside my door. Thick black marker across the cardboard read, Mom's room. Underneath, smaller notes in Vanessa's tidy hand, linens, old frames, misc. It was the neatness that hurt, the choreography of removal. I could see her labeling each box with the focus she used to color code spreadsheets. Not rage. Not panic. A plan. Inside my room, the lamp glowed at its lowest setting, a suggestion rather than a welcome. My dresser drawers had been emptied and refilled with careful bundles of clothing, as if I were a guest checking out. On the bed, my overnight bag stood open, a polite mouth waiting to be fed. On the pillow lay a photograph turned face down. I knew which one it was, the picture of Michael at 16, greasy hair and crooked smile, his arm slung around my shoulders after we changed a flat on the old Buick. We looked like we belonged to the same joke. I turned the frame over. His grin caught the light. I pressed my thumb to the glass. "You'd never have let this happen," I said, softly, not to accuse him, but to steady myself by the truth of who he was. Michael made lists on napkins and called if he'd be 5 minutes late. He believed most problems could be fixed if you kept your head and read the fine print. That was when I saw it, the fine print of my present life. Every closed account, every corrected word, every missing chair, every breathless "you'll be comfortable somewhere else." It wasn't grief fogging me. It was the slow repositioning of me from mother to obligation to obstacle. And obstacles are moved. A calm rose in me, practical as a clean sink. I put the photograph in my bag. I took my blue scarf, the one with tiny moth nicks along the edge, and looped it around my neck. I checked the drawer where I kept documents and found an empty space where my passport should have been. In its place, a folded sheet, a moving checklist printed from a website, boxes ticked beside donate, pack, redirect mail. Someone had prepared my absence. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the house. The refrigerator clicked and settled. A car passed on the street and faded. I thought of Robert's ashes beneath the maple. I thought of Michael's height marks on the pantry wall, faint under Vanessa's paint. I thought of the pharmacy screen, account closed. I opened the notes app on my phone and made a list, the way Michael taught me when he was 10 and saving for a skateboard. Deed copies, desk. Receipts for down payment, linen closet. Joint account statements, bank. Michael's thank you note, frame. Witnesses, Mrs. Bailey, Eli's teacher, Pastor Jim. Timeline, locks, mail, account closure, realtor visit. Every item steadied me. Paperwork had been used against me, I would answer with better paperwork. Not a scene. Not a fight. A record. In the kitchen, the night light glowed over the sink, the way I used to leave it for Michael after late shifts. I brewed chamomile, the last of a box. Steam pooled on the window. I wrote dates with my fingertip, April 2nd, forgery. April 9th, locks. April 14th, sign. I felt the thread that had kept me still, the fear of being called ungrateful, dramatic, difficult, loosening. Drawing a line would not make me hard. Boundaries aren't hardness. They are a cleanness, like washing your hands before you tend a wound. At 12:07 a.m., I went to the living room. Vanessa's leather planner lay on the coffee table. I stood a moment, undecided, then opened it. The week was a grid of handwriting. Next to Wednesday, open house? Underlined twice. Next to my name, storage, Sunday. I closed the planner and returned it. I wasn't there to steal or snoop for sport. I was there to see. Seeing is the beginning of action. Back in my room, I set my suitcase upright and fed it, 2 blouses, 1 sweater, flats, my toothbrush, the small tin of lavender balm I used on Michael's temples when migraines seized him in high school. The tin clicked shut like a miniature door. Something unclenched in my chest. I did not cry. Tears are not proof of love, sometimes they only confirm you have accepted the wrong script. I was writing a new one, with lines that said, stop. No more. Enough. Before sleeping, I placed 3 documents on the nightstand, the photocopy of the deed, the letter with my forged signature, and Michael's note. I smoothed their edges until they lined up. Evidence, motive, and love, the triad I needed. When the sun broke, it laid a blade of light across the floor, a clean cut between yesterday and whatever came next. I picked up my keys, their weight familiar, and listened to them settle in my palm. I spoke into the quiet, not a prayer, but a promise: I will not vanish. And I meant it. Morning smelled of coffee and cardboard. I dressed in my navy cardigan and slid the documents into a manila folder. Vanessa's car was gone, a reminder on the fridge read: staging consult, 10:30. The quiet I needed had opened. I left at 8:12 a.m. The air had that early spring bite that makes your hands ache on the wheel. I parked by the river, breathed, and called a name from my midnight list: Ben Cooper. He was an attorney who once helped a nurse I knew. He answered on the second ring. Cooper Law. Mr. Cooper, my name is Patricia Caldwell. I believe my daughter-in-law forged my signature to sell my home. A beat. Come in now, he said. Bring whatever you have. His office sat over a bakery. A receptionist took my name. Within minutes, Ben stepped out, a compact man with a precise handshake. I laid the folder between us: deed copy, receipts, the closure notice for our joint account, and the letter with the false version of me. Then I added Michael's note, his careful script: Mom, thank you for the down payment. You made this dream possible. Ben read with a stillness I recognized from ICU doctors. He underlined 2 dates, circled my forged signature, and asked for a summary. I gave him the timeline, starting with the locks and ending with the for sale sign planted like a flag. Finally, he looked up. Mrs. Caldwell, this sale is unlawful. You have standing. We can petition for a temporary restraining order today to freeze any transfer. We'll also initiate a fraud complaint and demand the communications. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Today? Today, he said, dialing. But we'll need corroboration. Anyone who saw the sign, anyone who heard her discuss removing you. Mrs. Bailey next door, I said. Pastor Jim. Eli's teacher knows I do pickup. Good. We'll draft affidavits. While the receptionist copied my documents, I stepped outside for air. My phone buzzed with a message: I'm outside your building. Grace. Grace was Michael's coworker. She held a small flash drive. Michael wanted you to have this, she said. He asked me to keep it until, if something happened. What is it? Just watch it first. Then call your lawyer. Back in Ben's office, we plugged the drive into his laptop. The screen brightened. There was my son, filmed at his desk. He looked pale, but his voice was level. Mom, he said, if you're seeing this, I didn't fix the mess. Debts showed up I don't recognize, 2 personal loans in my name. I didn't sign them. I confronted Vanessa. She said she'd handle it. Please protect yourself. Freeze any joint accounts, change the passwords, and don't sign anything without Ben Cooper reading it. I love you. I pressed my palm to the screen. Ben rewound the clip, noting timestamps. This is strong evidence of financial misconduct, he said. It supports fraud and will bolster an emergency petition. We moved quickly. Ben drafted the TRO request and a petition to set aside any pending sale. I swore my affidavit, careful with each word. By noon, he had filed with the clerk. He slid a copy toward me, the case number stamped in blue. You did the right thing, he said. I called the bank from his conference room and asked for an immediate freeze on any accounts that listed me as holder or guarantor. The representative verified my identity and placed flags. I changed the passwords to my email, pension portal, and cloud storage. I forwarded digital copies to a secure address Michael set up for me years ago after a phishing scare. On my way out, Ben handed me a checklist. If she or her agent contacts you, refer them to me, he said. Do not engage. Keep a log, date, time, exact words. I bought a spiral notebook and wrote on the first page, log. At home, the house was quiet. On the porch lay a packet from Brookfield Realty, comparable sales, suggested list price, bullet points about motivated seller. I photographed every page and filed it. A text pinged from Vanessa at 2:41 p.m. Stager loved the light in the living room. Please have your things sorted by Friday. I didn't reply. I copied the line into my notebook. At 3:18 p.m. Ben called. Hearing tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Judge Alvarez. Bring your originals. I'll meet you outside at 9. I ironed my cardigan, ordered my documents, set my keys beside the blue scarf. I made a simple dinner for Eli and left a note for Vanessa. Eli's math book is in his backpack. Spelling list on the fridge. P. Even in rupture, there is a child whose life should not break. I slept with my folder on the chair by the bed. The fridge hummed at 1:06 a.m. I woke, checked the clock, and let the dark pass. At dawn, I stood at the window and watched mist lift from the street. The maple leaves rattled like a quiet applause. I felt small, yes, but not alone. My life, built nail by nail, was answering back with structure. I tightened the loose button on my cardigan until it held. I was ready to be counted. The courthouse smelled faintly of floor wax and rain-soaked coats. I arrived 10 minutes early, folder pressed to my chest like a shield. Ben met me by the elevators, his tie slightly crooked, eyes clear. You're going to be fine, he said. In courtroom 3B, the air was cool and too bright. Vanessa sat 2 rows ahead, beside a realtor I didn't recognize. She wore a navy dress and pearls, mourning repurposed as professionalism. When she turned and saw me, her expression flickered, a half-second of surprise before she masked it. The judge entered. The clerk called our case. Ben rose. His voice was calm, every syllable anchored. He laid out the sequence, the forged signature, the attempted sale, my financial contribution, and finally, Michael's recorded message. The courtroom was silent except for the faint click of the playback. When the video ended, the judge looked directly at Vanessa. Mrs. Clark, do you dispute the authenticity of this recording? She hesitated, eyes darting. He was under stress. My husband, he misunderstood our finances. Do you deny signing your mother-in-law's name on the sale authorization? Her mouth opened, then closed. I may have filled it in by mistake. We were partners in the property. I thought. The judge lifted a hand. Enough. The evidence shows deliberate falsification. Temporary restraining order granted. Any sale, transfer, or encumbrance on the property is prohibited pending full review. The gavel struck. The sound felt like oxygen. Outside, rain had started again, steady and cleansing. Ben shook my hand. She's cornered now. Fraud investigators will follow the loans mentioned in the recording. It's out of your hands. I thanked him and walked down the courthouse steps. Across the plaza, Vanessa stood beneath the awning, phone pressed to her ear. Her free hand trembled slightly as she lit a cigarette. She didn't smoke before. When her eyes met mine, she looked away. The next week unfolded with the slow rhythm of justice gathering speed. Investigators subpoenaed the loan files. They found 3 personal loans in Michael's name, applications submitted from Vanessa's laptop, signatures forged. The sums totaled $86,000. 2 banks filed fraud claims. Ben called daily with updates. Her accounts are frozen. The realty agency has pulled their listing. It's moving fast. Word spread through our small town the way wind moves through wheat, whisper first, then a wave. At the grocery store, I overheard a clerk telling another, "Did you hear about that woman who forged her mother-in-law's signature? They say the paper's running it." And they did. Local widow prevents fraudulent home sale linked to forgery case. My name was printed small, Vanessa's was not. The article mentioned pending criminal investigation and misuse of marital assets. I cut the piece out, not for pride but proof. After so much gaslighting, paper again became my ally. 3 days later, Vanessa showed up unannounced. It was early evening, Eli was with a neighbor. She stood on the porch, raincoat unbuttoned, mascara faintly smeared. Patricia, please, she said. Can we talk? I opened the door halfway. About what? She swallowed hard. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted a new start. Michael left debts you didn't know about, and I thought if I sold. You thought you could erase me, I said. My voice surprised me, steady, almost gentle. But Michael didn't leave debts. You made them. Her eyes filled, but the tears looked rehearsed. I'm losing everything, she whispered. I stepped back so the porch light drew a line between us. Then maybe it's time to see what everything really means. For a moment, she looked like she might reach for my hand. Then she dropped her gaze, turned, and walked down the steps into the drizzle. I watched until her figure blurred into the streetlights. By the end of that month, her job was gone. The marketing firm cited reputational risk. Her friends, those who filled her dinner table when times were good, stopped answering. The house sale was voided, title restored. Her name, once polished and sure, became something whispered with caution. I didn't gloat. Justice isn't sweetness. It's simply the removal of what was wrong. One afternoon, I went to the garden to trim the maple that shaded Robert's ashes. The soil was damp and black beneath my gloves. I felt the earth breathe under my hands, solid, unchanged. Across the street, Mrs. Bailey called, heard the court wrapped it up, dear? Yes, I said. It's done. That night, I lit a candle on the kitchen counter. Not for Vanessa, not for vengeance, but for Michael, for the promise I kept. The flame trembled, caught steady, and filled the room with quiet gold. Ben called one last time. Investigation closed, he said. Fraud confirmed. Property and assets secured. They'll likely offer restitution, but you don't need to decide now. I don't want money, I said. Just peace. You've earned that. When the call ended, I stood by the window. Outside, the for sale sign lay face down in the grass where rain had softened the ground. I left it there. Some symbols deserve to fade on their own. Karma, I realized, rarely arrives with thunder. It comes through procedure, patience, ink on a judge's order, quiet, deliberate, final. And sometimes, that's the loudest kind of mercy there is. It took months for the dust to settle, though dust is the wrong word, it was more like fog, slowly clearing until I could see what still stood. By late autumn, the maple in the yard had turned the color of rusted copper, its roots deep around the ashes of the man who built the first part of my life. The house was legally mine now, but I no longer wanted it. Every wall carried echoes of closed doors, measured voices, and what betrayal sounds like when it's pretending to be reason. In October, I sold the property myself, not to flee, but to finish. The sale wasn't large, but enough. I packed the essentials, photographs, my nursing pin, one quilt Robert's mother had made, and the framed note from Michael that had survived every upheaval. The rest I left for the new family who would fill it with new laughter. When the agent handed me the final papers, she said, "You sure you want to let go of a place this lovely?" "Yes," I said. "I'm sure." I moved into a small apartment by the river, 3rd floor, corner unit. The rent was reasonable, the view open. My new neighbors were retirees, teachers, and a widower who watered everyone's plants when they went away. On my first morning there, I brewed coffee and opened the curtains. Light spilled over the counter like something living. No tension hummed under the floorboards, no one measured the length of my stay. At 8:10 a.m., the phone rang. It was Eli. "Grandma, can I come this weekend?" Mom said it's okay. "Of course, sweetheart," I said. His voice had grown deeper since spring, but his laughter still had the same bright crackle. When he arrived that Saturday, he ran straight to the window. "You can see the boats from here," he said, nose pressed to the glass. We spent the afternoon baking lemon muffins, his favorite, and walked along the river trail, throwing crumbs to the ducks. He talked about soccer tryouts and science projects, and when he mentioned his mother, it was with careful neutrality, the way children speak around fragile truths. I didn't press. My duty now was not to correct his loyalty, but to give him a steady place to rest it. That night, as he slept on the pull-out couch, I watched his chest rise and fall and thought of how survival sometimes looks ordinary: clean sheets, warm air, a lamp that stays on as long as you wish. I whispered a quiet thank you to whatever keeps hearts beating after they've been broken more than once. The next week, I began volunteering at the hospital again, 2 mornings a week. The hall smelled the same: antiseptic, coffee, and the metallic whisper of machines. But I wasn't there to chase the past. I was there to remind myself that care, when freely given, renews the giver. Patients called me Mrs. C and told me stories while I adjusted pillows or filled water pitchers. One man said, "You must have been a nurse for a long time." "Long enough to know healing isn't the same as fixing," I answered. He smiled as if he understood. Sometimes, on my walk home, I stopped at the bakery below Ben Cooper's office. He always waved from the window when he saw me. The legal battle had ended months ago, yet he still asked, "How's retirement treating you?" "Better than expected," I'd reply. I traded chaos for quiet. At home, the evenings became rituals of peace. I'd light the same candle I used the night the court ruled in my favor. Its wax had tunneled into a narrow well, the flame deep and steady. I'd sip tea, listen to the hum of the refrigerator, once a sound of tension, now a companion. Some nights, I wrote in a notebook, not for evidence but remembrance. I listed lessons learned. Trust, but keep copies. Silence is not consent. Kindness must include yourself, or it isn't kindness at all. I thought often of Vanessa, though not with hate. Last I heard, she'd moved to another town, working part-time, sharing custody of Eli. I wished her clarity, if not comfort. We both had to live with what we'd chosen. Winter came early that year. Snow gathered on the window ledge, soft as cotton. I brewed another pot of coffee and thought of how Michael used to tease me for measuring every scoop exactly. "You could time your life with that spoon," he'd say. I smiled at the memory. Maybe I had done exactly that. Eli and I built new traditions: Sunday breakfasts, puzzle nights, a shared notebook where we wrote jokes and recipes. He called it Grandma's Survival Guide. On its last page, in his uneven writing, he'd added a line that made my throat tighten: "Family isn't who keeps you, it's who keeps showing up." I keep that page on the fridge now, next to a magnet shaped like a little blue house. The old house is gone, but peace lives here, in rooms that hold only what's needed. And every morning, when sunlight touches the mug in my hands, I feel the balance I thought I'd lost returning, quiet as breath, proof that even after betrayal, life can still offer gentleness to those who choose not to harden. If you've ever been left out of your own story, know this: you can begin a new chapter anytime. You don't need permission to start again. If my story touched a nerve, you belong here. Subscribe to hear truths where silence becomes strength. Peace, I've learned, is not a reward for winning, it's the air you breathe when you finally stop defending yourself. I wake early now, open the balcony door, and let the river wind move through my small apartment. It smells of iron and rain, steady and forgiving. I still visit Michael's grave once a month. I bring white lilies and tell him about Eli's new jokes, about the muffins that never rise evenly, about the quiet joy that has taken root. I no longer ask why things happened, I simply thank him for teaching me how to rebuild with grace. Vanessa's shadow has faded into distance, and that's enough. We each live with the truth we made. My truth is calm. Sometimes karma doesn't thunder, it arrives softly, rearranging what's broken into something livable. If you've been betrayed and silenced, remember, you are allowed to begin again. If this story touched a nerve, you belong here. Subscribe to hear truths where silence becomes strength.